to be 2 hours max. We will have a bit of presentation to be led by someone. I'll be introducing him, as you can see. And during the session, as soon as it's done, we'll take questions towards the end of it. And then we'll wrap up with a closing remarks from one person that I'll be introducing to us. So if you're joining us today, we will be happy to have your thoughts, whatever you think about the presentation in the comment box. So feel free when we kickstart. By way of introduction, I'll be happy if you can share a bit about you, which organization you are working with in the chat box, and I'll be happy to read it out to all of us on the call today. So once again, I want to welcome all participants joining us, especially our friends from the CSO platforms on SDG Ghana, the Human Rights Reporters Ghana NGO, the Young Advocates Ghana, the Social Youth Drive Foundation. So we want to know which organization you're joining us from. So just use the chat to type that out for us to see. Yeah, and then I would introduce our facilitator for today. So I'm waiting to read in the chat which organization you're joining us from. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for joining, Constance. So in the spirit of joining, maybe I can also ask what's your expectation for this session? It's a capacity building session, so let's know what you expect to learn from this session. Yeah. I see Princess Lovia Thete, Portia joining us from Dream Hunt and 350 Ghana. Thank you for making time. Maris Akon from IDEC. Thank you for joining. Marian Idrisu, Mami Ofori, yes, keep them coming. Ali Ibrahim, Jemima from CareNet, Hilton, okay. Mabel from Wasi, Gideon Toje from Commonwealth Human Rights Initiatives. Vivian, yes, Vivian. Hi, please let us know which organization you're joining us from so we can connect after the session. Okay, there's another Constance Oheniwa joining us from Women's Empowerment Foundation. Thank you for joining. Okay, great. Hilton has updated his intro. So Hilton works with NEOD, if it's pronounced right, Network of Empowered Youth for Development from Kumasi. Okay, great. Vivian, you work with the Youth Advocates Ghana team. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so whilst we keep our intros coming in, I would like to read a brief bio about our facilitator for today. Most of you probably know him, but for the sake of formality's sake as well, I'll read a bit about him. So then we know what we will be expecting from him this mid-morning and afternoon. Our personality for today, or our facilitator for today, is in the person of Kwadwo Oteng Owusu. He's a national coordinator on the Ghana Civil Society Platform on SDGs. Kwadwo Owusu is a development planning practitioner with years of pragmatic experience in local economic development, tax justice, gender and youth empowerment space. He has a wealth of knowledge in local and urban governance, right-based approaches, and social accountability. Currently, Kwadwo coordinates a Ghana Civil Society Organizations Platform on the Sustainable Development Goals, a role that enables him to champion civil society advocacy on the SDGs in Ghana. He thus builds strategic multi-stakeholder partnerships between governments, civil society, and private sector towards the attainment of the SDGs. His aspiration is to influence the narrative and processes that seek to deliver development to the broad masses of the Ghanaian population. He's passionate to see systems that ensure that the potential of people is given the opportunities to thrive. That place and location of habitation are not inimical to the prosperity of young people, women, and persons with disability. Kwadwo Oteng Owusu has a Bachelor of Science in Development Planning from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kumasi, and a Master of Science in Urban Planning and Policy Design from the Politecnico di Milano, Milan, Italy. This morning I just traveled to Italy, and he's a lover of great music and writes poetry in his spare time. Colleagues joining us, kindly use the function to clap for our facilitator, who will be taking the floor very soon, Mr. Kwadwo Oteng Owusu. Such a beautiful profile means that we're going to have a great learning experience, sharing from his depth knowledge over the works he's done in the past. We're so grateful to have you, Mr. Kwadwo Oteng Owusu. If you can hear us, if you can hear me clearly, kindly take the floor now.
Thank you, Prosper, and good morning to all of us. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. Am I being heard well and properly?
Very audible, properly.
Good. So it's always a pleasure to do this. For some few years now, I've always enjoyed being in the shadows and working from the background. I will only choose to do this if I really feel it's really necessary to. But I think it's the essence of being a coordinator. You rather would have people take the shine or be in the lead. And so, a moment. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, please. Very visible.
Let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, from my side. Please do comment in the chat if you can see his screen. Those joining us.
Yeah,
I can
we can
see. Okay, great.
Prosper.
Yeah, we can see. Okay, so I think if we can have it in the slideshow mode, then you can present your flow, or you prefer to have it in this format. We can actually see your screen. Okay, so Kojo will be presenting the screen again shortly. If you have introduced yourself, yes, please take this opportunity to do that in the chat. What are your expectations for this session? I'd like to hear them and read it out. Okay, so I'm reading Constance Oheniwa's expectation. So resource mobilization is a real deal when it comes to managing a nonprofit. especially youth and young women-led organizations. I hope this webinar answers some of the many questions that we seem not to know how to get the answers to. Thanks for being so thoughtful of us and for putting this event together. Absolutely. I think when it comes to the nonprofit space, a lot of resource needs to be mobilized in order to execute and impact the lives of young people and other stakeholders in the process. Very often, not a lot of people know about how to, navigate a way around finding the right human resource and even other means of resources to execute. And so having a resource person, in the person of Kwadwo Owusu, it's very good to bring forth his experience, some of the challenges that CSOs go through in their line of work, and mobilizing resources can be looked into. So I'm also looking forward to learning a lot more from him. If we have a bit more of expectations, I'll be happy to read them out. So Mabel says to understand what exactly resource management entails or mobilization entails and how to go about it in detail. Gideon, definitely the recording will be shared on the call. My colleagues behind the technical team.
Hello, Prosper.
Yeah, Kwadwo, are you back on now?
I'm back on, but I'm unable to share. So if Priscilla can make me a host or a co-host, so I can.
Okay.
Share my.
Let me see if I can also do that.
Okay. We're good to go now. Sorry, my primary internet connection, which is the Vodafone fiber, developed an issue this morning. So I was using Tigo, and just when I was about to speak, it told me internet connectivity is unstable. So I swapped to MTN fiber just now. So I'm trying all the networks now. I'll give you feedback which one is stable afterwards.
Absolutely. This is better.
Yeah. So I know we have barely an hour to have this discussion, so I will really not bore you with a lot of the theory, but be a bit more practical so that it helps. And I am mindful of the kind of audience. So I'm expecting that people here are members, national NGOs, regional districts. And so we'll touch on issues that are of interest to national NGOs as pertains to international or INGOs, a bit of that, but we'll focus more on the basic things you need to do. You perhaps may not even have to get a consultant to help you put together your resource mobilization strategy. Outline of the presentation, we'll touch a bit on what you can call your resource mobilization strategy. Some of the key things that you need to do, your project portfolio analysis, your partner or competitor analysis, your donor mapping, your funding plan or strategy, and then some tips that will be useful for such a program or such a process. And I know a lot of us are into definitions. We like and we love definitions. We are taught to define things when we go to school. So a resource mobilization is a process of getting resources from the resource provider using different mechanisms to implement an organization's predetermined goals. I intentionally underlined predetermined because goals can be predetermined, goals can be reformed or rephrased or even made anew depending on what you are seeking to do. But what is important here is for you to know that resource mobilization is a process. It is about you getting resources. It is about knowing who the resource is with. And it's about how you'll be able to get that resource depending on who the resource provider is. And ultimately, this is not for personal use. This is for your organization. And as I said, it's either what you seek to get, the resources you seek to get influences your goals, or your goals give the direction as to which resources you go in for. So in a way, your resource mobilization strategy is to help you understand your resources, what your resources are. As an organization, what do you have and what is your resource? And then how do you use that to mobilize resources? How do you use what you have as an organization to mobilize the resources to help you achieve your organizational goals? So everything you have as an organization should be a resource. Everything you don't have as an organization can be a resource. Everything that you need to get, any resources you need to get, it starts first with the organization. It starts first with your institution. So you need to identify and recognize internally and see what you can monetize, how you can use that, you can monetize that. A moment. How you can monetize that.
Can you get back to the presentation? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So I put this there as keys from the definition. You need to know the what. What are your resources? You need to also know the who. Who are your resources in your organization? Who are your resource providers? You need to know the where. Where are the resources in your organization, and where are the resource providers, the people you seek to get the provider? You need to know the when. And the when is more about, once you know who the resource providers are, when are those resources available? When can you access them? And most importantly, you also need to know the how. How do you get it? So you know who you are, you know what you have, you need to know where to look, you need to know when to look, you need to know what to look, you need to also know what you need to do and what is available to you and what you can access now or later. Resources abound, but you can't access all of them. It's not every resource that you will be able to access or you can access. So you need to know all of this. You can't get it all and you can't have it all. So it's important that you do that. In doing your, looking at yourself, I wrote here internal. This is important. Before you even start anything, you need to do some internal retrospection. It starts with you. Resource mobilization starts with you. You look at your human resource. I call that technical expertise. And some of the questions or some of the things you need to do is to have, do you ask yourself, do you have the appropriate human resources in place? Do we have the various policies that now donors ask for, or everybody requires in terms of your programming, and you have your child policy in place, you have your safeguarding, conflict resolution, all of that, all those policies that has become familiar with our territory. Programming, your reporting, are your organizational annual and program reports up to date? If I came now to your organization, I said, I have $10 million to give you, give me your last year annual report, just that, and I'll give you $10 million. Will you have that available? Or just give me your annual report for the last 5 years. Would you have that available? If you don't, then these are some of the things you need to address, even before you go out there asking for money from anybody. Leverage and expertise. In terms of what you are doing, ask yourself, are we putting our best foot forward with our programming, our program delivery and implementation? Are we the best at what we do within our sector? There are so many NGOs, CSOs doing the same things. Ask yourself, what leverage do you have? What do you do that you do best among your peers? What do you do and you do it best among your peers? These are some of the introspections you need to do. On finance, issues around audit and compliance. Are your books up to date? And do we have the appropriate financial systems in place? If you are hoping to get funding of $2 million, the requirements in terms of compliance will be more than if you are hoping to get 5,000 cedis from Kwadwo or from Prosper. And so depending on how big you want, how high you are aiming, these are some of the issues you have to pay attention to. A lot of donors would rather have INGOs as lead when they are doing proposal writings, not because they don't trust international NGOs, but then the INGOs will invest a lot more in the financial systems. And so they know it's easier to have an organization who has handled $500,000 in terms of project money. It's easier to trust them with $1 million because they have invested in the financial system. So ask yourself this. With communication and visibility, ask yourself, do we have the appropriate communication channels and means? Are we visible to the right audience for the right reasons? You are known for something. You may think nobody knows your organization, but people know you and you are known for something. Ask that question. Are we known to the right audience and for the right reasons? Are we communicating our programming, our successes, our challenges, using the appropriate means? So these are basics. There are a lot of them, but these are at least some of the basic things you need to do, some of the introspections you need to do to give you a basis on your resource mobilization plan or strategy. Because if you are not sure or you don't have a good account of who you are and what you do, you will go out there, see the opportunity, but miss it. So as part of that, there are a lot of assessments that you do. So I'll share some of the assessment tools and how you can apply them as part of designing your resource mobilization strategy. And the very first one will be your SWOT analysis. I know we all have heard this severally. You have to do your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats analysis. So for a SWOT, you are looking at your organization. What are our strengths? So some of the introspections you have done already, you come here and you just organize them. So with respect to your communication, with respect to your programming, with respect to your finance, with respect to everything, you organize it in this shape. And that gives you a sense of areas you need to improve and areas that gives you a leverage above everybody else. So internal origin, attributes that are of your organization, external origin, attributes of the environment. You can do it this way. There are several ways of doing SWOT, but basically you are looking at things that are your strength as an organization that emanate from you for your strength, weaknesses that emanate from you as an organization, opportunities that are external, that emanate from outside, threats, weaknesses that are external. A summary of it, things in terms of strength, things your company does well, qualities that separate you from your competitors, internal resources such as skilled, knowledgeable staff, tangible assets such as intellectual property, capital, and all of that. Weaknesses, things you lack, things your competitors do better than you, resource limitations, unclear, unique selling position, opportunities, underserved market or specific products, few competitors in an area or emerging need for your products or service, press media coverage of your company, threats, emerging competitors, changing regulatory environment, negative press, media coverage. So these are just examples, just to stimulate your thoughts. So when you are doing this, what is important is that be sincere and honest. This is an internal process. Even if you go in for a consultant to do it, you have to be honest. Because if you are not honest at this point, then you just will be wasting your time in the next steps going forward. One, you are done with this. One other thing that you also need to do is what we call your project portfolio analysis as part of your resource mobilization. As earlier on I mentioned, you start from within what you have. So you have to do what every organization does. You implement projects, or you have been implementing projects, or you have been implementing activities. So it's important to look at those activities and see where the funding gaps are, or to help you understand where the funding gaps are. I'll give an example with a table. Hopefully you are able to see the table well. You have a project. So just as an example, the title of that project, it says Partnership to Advance Community-Based Education. It's important who gave you money, or who was your funder for this particular project. So let's say USAID, let's say European Union. In which locations did that project happen? It's important you capture that. Who were your partners? Did you do it alone, or you did it with a partner organization? What was the funding status or the development status? Was it you did a self-funding, you wrote a proposal and you had it, or is something that is even in the pipeline you are hoping to get? In which of these sectors? Is it under education, under health, under gender, under anti-corruption or corruption or social accountability? It's important you do that. When was this done? So maybe it was done in 2019 to 2021, or it's still ongoing. This was done 10 years ago for a period of 3 months or 6 months. It's important to know the project value, how much money was spent on the project. So if it was $1 million, was there a cost sharing approach? Cost sharing these days basically means that a donor will say, okay, we will give you, the project is costing $1 million, but we will provide $700,000. We expect that you as the implementing organization should be able to mobilize $300,000. So at every point, when you request for money, they will pay 70% and expect that you pay the accompanying 30%. So it's important that you provide these kind of details for each of the projects you have done, and then some activity description, top line for your project. Now, why this is important is that it gives you as an organization a fair idea of the donors who have shown interest in your work. It gives you a fair idea in terms of value, how much money your organization has been able to implement or execute. And for the secret with this is also that should you have any meeting with any donor and you're able to even just project this and speak over this very well, it gives a good picture of who your organization is. Because if you had, say, 10 donor organizations giving you money over a period of 10 years or 20 years, that is enough reference to show that, yeah, you are a credible organization and we can work with you. So this is important. For you, it helps you to know where your greatest strengths are. It helps you to also know in terms of location, geographical locations, where you perhaps have built a lot of network and mileage. So it's important that you do this. The next thing that you also have to do as part of your resource mobilization strategy is what I call either your partner or competitor matrix, depending, because the same organizations who you will partner are the same organizations who are your competitors. And this will enable you to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your competition. It will enable you to better define your unique selling points. It will enable you to identify potential donors, and also enable you to identify complementary projects for funding. Now, what is important here is that we are in the same sector. So the person or the organization giving money to organization A is likely to give money to organization B. So just as an example, if USAID is giving money to YOTA, because YOTA is our host for today, then to do a project on youth empowerment, and you are a youth organization, it already gives you an indication that USAID could be your potential donor or potential organization to give you money. Why? Because you're also a youth organization, and most likely your project or your organization may be of interest to USAID. So you do this to have a first sense of who potentially could give you money to work with. It also helps you to know. So I am Youth Advocate Ghana, you are YOTA, you are Oxfam, you are Send Ghana. If you are looking at your competition, it helps you to also know what are they doing and how are they doing it, and what are we doing and how are we doing it, and how do we, for purposes of resource mobilization, present our case to be unique and be innovative. So if you do a deep introspection, you should be able to know that, well, we are all doing youth empowerment, but one of them is doing it through youth ICT. The other is doing it through gender empowerment. The other is doing it through agro-processing, but we are all doing youth empowerment. So you are able to position yourself well by understanding how your competition are delivering their programming, where their weaknesses are, and how you use that to magnify your strengths. Again, this is something that will help you to do that introspection. Similar to what you did earlier on, this is external looking. So what human resources do they have? Do our competition have appropriate human resources? And do they have these various policies in place? Now, let me just ask a question, and you can answer in the chat box. Later, we'll pick it up. If you were a donor organization and two organizations came to you and needed the same amount of money, and on the HR list, you found that one is using interns and volunteers for the head of the program is a volunteer or is an intern, the head of finance is an intern, the head of communications is an intern for one organization. In the other organization, the head of HR has 5 years of experience or 6 years of experience. Head of program has 10 years of experience. Head of finance has 20 years of experience. If you are a donor organization, which of these organizations would you lean towards in terms of feeling secure that if I give them money, they will be able to work with it? We can answer that in the chat box. But ultimately, if your competition or your competitors have better human resources than you, then they are miles ahead of you in terms of resource mobilization. If their annual reports and programming are up to date, you can easily find these on their website or on their Facebook pages. Then they are also miles ahead of you in terms of resource mobilization. If you talk about, say, your area of work or your scope of work, your thematic area of work, and everybody mentions your competition's name, then it already tells you that they are miles ahead of you in terms of resource mobilization. And so you do this, finance and compliance, you go to their website, you are easily able to see their audited reports on their website, but we can't find it on your website or on your social media pages. It tells you your competition are ahead of you. If they are visible, they are engaging in the social media spaces, on their Facebook, on their website, they are being spoken of on radio. It already tells you that they are miles ahead of you. Now, what is important is that you use this to know areas that you need to improve on, or yourself as an organization. Okay. One of the templates that you can use to do your partner or competition analysis is this. I'm sharing just one template. There are several templates, but so you have the organization. I did it partners and competition. You can sum it together, or potential partners, you can sum it together depending on how you want to do it. But so you have the name of the organization. It's important to know their location. So post office, address, where they are. So if where they are could be here in Accra, or it could be in Tamale, it could be in Salaga, it could be it could be whole scope of operation and year of establishment. So some organizations just operate within a region. Some have a national appeal. Some have about 4 offices. They have a head office in Accra, but have 3 regional offices. And so it's important to have this also as part of your partner or competition analysis. Ideally, you should have a fair idea what their social media presence is. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter, Instagram? Do they have a website? You can even go deeper by trying to find out how many Facebook followers do they have, Twitter followers do they have, how often do they tweet, and how is the response rate, and all of that. For your own good, because they are a competition. If they are doing it and you are not doing it, you are being left behind in terms of rates of mobilization. Programmatic focus. I just gave some examples. So what are their niche? What are they doing and they are doing well? Democratic governance as an example, anti-corruption, gender, social accountability. So you are a youth organization and you are only doing, say, agribusiness. That's the only area you are working. That means that if an organization comes to you and they are interested in youth, but they are not interested in youth and agribusiness, you are not able to access that funding, or if you are not able to get that funds. But with agribusiness, what are the complementary programmatic areas you can add to your work? So this is to help you do that. You look at your partners, look at the program areas they are doing, or your competition, look at the program areas they are doing. You look at the other complementary programs that they are implementing. And you then do that introspection as an organization to see how you can learn from that. Examples of projects implemented. These days, it's easy to know what people are doing. Donors will give you money. And as part of the contract, you are expected to mention their names in all your communication, in all your engagement. Some even go further to even request that you mention the project amount and all of that. So it's easy to, without even going to ask anybody, be able to do a research to know what projects your competition or your partner organizations are doing. And that dovetails into the funding history. It's easy to find out from websites, from Facebook accounts, what fund.
Kojo, are you there? Okay, so whilst Kojo is sorting out his projection again, I will quickly read out a few of the responses that have come in so far to the question that he asked earlier about 2 organizations. Mabel says organization B with the experienced employees. Douglas is also voting for organization B. And Marianne is also voting for organization A. She's of the view that this inexperienced organization get to have experience in the process. Kojo, are you back? Okay, we can see your screen. Maybe you can start speaking, then we'll possibly pick it up from there.
It's important that you do this because it helps you to know who your potential partners can be. You don't only do this to learn, you also do this to know who your competition are and what your potential partners could be. Which organizations can you even speak to in terms of revenue, resource mobilization? This is another template. This may not be as detailed as the other one. So organization, their sector, how can they be a partner, or are they just a competition? Then you do what we call a donor mapping. And the donor mapping lets you know the background of donors, their giving history, their preferred methods of grant giving to be one step ahead. So in doing your donor mapping, of course, if you have done your partner competition well, if you have done your project portfolio analysis well, if you have done all of that well, you already have a fair idea of which organizations give money or which organizations provide funds for the area in which you work. And so you come to your donor analysis, you are looking at the name, their website, all those details can be on one side. The donor type, are they multilateral, are they bilateral, philanthropic foundations? Do they give money to alliances? As an organization, you already have some existing relationship with them. Some donors have a position. So I'll give an example. The name just skipped me. Canada, what's the name of the Canadian donor giving arm? Global Affairs Canada. Global Affairs Canada has a strong leaning towards issues of gender. So it's important for you to know the European Union in recent years have had a lot of leanings towards local government and how CSOs can work with local government. So it's important to know this as part of your donor mapping. Also, geographical emphasis. Some donors do projects in urban areas. Some have a strong affiliation to donors projects in rural areas. Then funding opportunities. You also have to have a fair idea if there's a cyclical thing or if they are seeking to even change their strategy, donors change their strategy areas of focus. You need to have a fair idea as part of your donor matrix. Another template you can use, the name of the donor, the funding type, their areas of interest. Of course, you have their contacts, phone, emails, location, if you have to write them, example of grants or funding they have previously given, and then application requirements. So there are several templates you can use to do your donor mapping, but ultimately you do your donor mapping so you know who you can approach now, who you can approach in the medium term, and who you should aim ultimately to approach in terms of resource mobilization. So the crux of the matter, after doing all this background work, you bring it into your mobilization plan. And in doing your mobilization plan, I'll share this short template. It can be much detailed. Templates, you can add on, delete as it's feasible to you. But what is important is to understand your resourcing area. And so I'll focus on the resourcing area, just give a brief on the description, engagement methods, challenges, strengths, and all of that, just for our purposes for this morning. So when you say strategic multi-country agreements, it's where an organization is based on its global strategy may raise funds that entails a select of international affiliates, funds and so this usually applies to the Oxfams, the World Visions, the CARE Internationals, the Plan Internationals. They have a global office, and the global office may go for money or go for resources at the global level and then give to country programs or at country levels for implementation. And so if you are an NGO and you don't have that affiliation, this is not an area you can mobilize resources from. Then there are the donor restricted grants, and this refers to all the institutional donors who could potentially fund the organization. So the EUs, the DFIDs, the USAIDs, the Global Affairs Canada, and all of that. Engagement process and methodology. So with that, you have to analyze each donor, their priorities, and do, if you have some leverage, you can organize learning events and invite them to participate. And in those learning events, you share your program achievements and all of that. Some things that you have done, resources that you think they will be interested in. You can develop and disseminate capacity statements. You can intensify internal communication activities. You can do periodic engagements with identified head of units. So those are all processes you can engage in to build some relationship with some donor organizations. It's important that in the context of this, you do challenges and strengths. So these are just examples. Now changing dynamics due to COVID. They say we are a lower middle income country. Do you have challenges even accessing information, or do you have challenges knowing what donors want? In terms of strengths, are your books in good order? Do you have a unique model of delivery? Then the other aspects, you look at how this can be improved, what you must do to improve on your engagement process, improve on your strengths, improve on your weaknesses. And then actions which are required. What must you do as an organization internally to be able to access funds from these types of organizations, from the EUs, from the DFID? Do you need to do a recruitment? Do you need to develop a new communication strategy? Do you need to build capacity on any area you have identified as a weakness or you have identified as a flaw? So it's important you do this. By the time you have gone through all of this, you will already see the strategies that you need to implement to mobilize resources from donors, depending on where you've placed and you find and you place them. Some of the resourcing areas, consortium donor grants. Consortium donor grants are grants that are usually available not for each one organization, but for organizations working together. And these days it's quite common. Grants will come and they say we need a consortium. So you need to have 5-6 organizations writing one application. The trick with this kind of area is that if you have not already built some rapport with organizations that you will be going into that proposal with, trust me, no matter how good your proposal is, it is seen, it is clear. So it's important that, for instance, you are on the YouthSAP platform, you already start engaging with organizations, exploring possible areas of raising funds together. If it's possible, you can have some, maybe every quarter you meet, you talk about it, you discuss ideas, you jot it down, you write concept notes, and just hibernate it. In my former organization, we had what we call the concept note bank. You put it down, concept note bank for just you as an organization, for possible consortiums. You do all of those down. Service contracts are also some of the resourcing areas. And here, it works more like a consultancy. Organizations will put out a consultancy, and you can also apply as an organization to do the consultancy. So if it's the EU asking for that, you can do that. If it is even civil society organizations asking for some research work to be done or some monitoring work to be done, and you think that is an area of expertise with the organization and you qualify for it, you can apply for it. So it's also an area you can make money from. Unsolicited grants, and this is where you don't need anybody to put out a call. You prepare your own proposal and you share with a possible donor organization. But the key here is for you to have some pre-existing relationship with them. So they funded the organization 10 years ago, but you haven't heard from them again. It's a good time to think of, oh, can we develop something and approach them and have a discussion based on the project we did, based on some new learning, based on some things that are emerging in the sector. So unsolicited grants are also a good resourcing area you can look at. Strategic alliances with sister agencies or like-minded organizations. So you are all youth organizations. You come together and say, okay, Youth SDG platform, we want to approach the UNDP and tell them that the youth in Ghana are suffering. And so we want to present you a proposal as to how best to address youth and SDG in Ghana. And you present that proposal to UNDP, and the money comes, and then all of you already in the proposal have roles you have to play and all of that. So that is also possible area of resource financing. I'm just limiting it to the resourcing area in the description, but in doing that, you have to do the engagement process, the challenges, the strengths, how this can be improved, and the resources required. You have to fill all those places for each of the resourcing areas. Fundraising event and open house. I think this doesn't need, you decide that, okay, this month we'll have an open house. So you do an event, invite everybody, donors, partners, they come and they interact with the organization to know what you are doing, how you are doing it, your successes that you have achieved in your program implementation. You do that for your donors, for partners. It helps you to build new relationships. Philanthropy, foundation, corporate organizations, funding and technical support from corporate organizations. So, and these examples are the MTN foundations, the Vodafone foundations, all these foundations or all these philanthropies that are available. You can engage them and get money also from them. Social enterprise is where you set up a for-profit organization and plow back money to support your non-profit work. So you are into agribusiness, you teach young people how to do piggery, you teach young people how to grow mushroom. So then as an organization, you establish your own piggery, you establish your own mushroom growing farm, and the sales you get from that, you plow it back to support your work as an organization. So this is some of the resourcing areas. There are some which are at global level you may not be able to reach if you are not an international organization. Donor restricted. I think this is where a lot of us focus. We are looking for donor organizations to give us money. Consortiums, when you build consortiums and you apply or you approach organizations, service contracts, which are consultancies, unsolicited grants based on pre-existing relationships or new and emerging relationships, you speak to an organization and get money from them. Then strategic alliances. So essential tips for fund raising or fund mobilization.
Yes, we would have different approaches to.
Essential tips for fund mobilization. We all want money. Nobody doesn't. Everybody wants money, but apply for reasonable and appropriate amount of funding. I remember my former organization, we used to give them small monies, and people will come, and a proposal is costing about $5 million, £5 million, and I'm looking at it like, even me sitting here, I'm looking for that amount of money, and you are an NGO that operates at the local level, and you bring a proposal that huge. On the scale of that, I may not even take you serious going forward. So be reasonable in the money you are looking for. Be reasonable. Don't overdo yourself. Provide specifics in your proposal, but be concise. Proposal should not be full of English. It should be full of facts. This is what we think the problem is. This is what we think we'll be able to achieve solve that problem. And if we solve that problem, this is what we think that we will have as outcomes. Don't be overambitious and say things that you know in the end you can't do, you can't achieve just because you want money. That English is good, but I won't give you money because you write well, your English is good. Build a network of partners. I think I've already emphasized so strongly on this. Be precise when responding to solicitations and start pilot projects with private funds if possible. This is also something that personally I've seen a lot of INGOs do. My former organization used to do that a lot. You have an idea, but no donor seems to be interested in it, but you are convinced that this is a good idea. You can pilot it, and on the basis of that pilot, mobilize funding to upscale it. And so you think that if we play loud music, pregnant women will not lose their babies, and everybody thinks you are crazy. Then you start a pilot of it, and on the basis of the outcome, people will no longer think you are crazy because you'll be talking to facts. So that is what we mean by start pilot projects with private funds if possible. So, and this is for us in preparing your or designing your strategy. Things that you take advantage of, geographical experience. These are common, but I'm just highlighting it here. You are in the Upper East region. You don't have to be in Accra to get funds because the organizations looking for credible organizations in the Upper East region to work with. So in that area, be the best, be the most credible, be the most effective, extensive knowledge of your local political, cultural, and linguistic content. Your staff and offices are already on the ground and to go. Technical expertise, specific sectorial focus. You can't be everywhere and be doing everything. There are some of our members that they are in gender, they are in anti-corruption, everywhere. So, of course, people may not tell you in their face, but they know. They know you are everywhere. And so even when calls come up and they are building networks, they are building consortiums, when people mention your name, they'll say, oh, these people, they are everywhere. They are not sure what they do. Don't mind them. And then credible skills and experience, technical expertise, demographic expertise, focus on serving a distinct demographic group such as women, children, ethnic minorities, or high-risk populations. Similar to technical expertise, credibility is key. So here, so for instance, if we mention PPAG, we know just by saying PPAG, we know the demographic groups that PPAG works with. If we mention Marie Stopes, it comes like that. So it's important that you focus on something in terms of demography. Plan International, we know. Plan, World Vision, we work with children. Oxfam, we know. Oxfam is interested in inequality. So it's important. Special resource leveraging, large volume base of volunteers. Do you have them? Do you have unrestricted funding resources, attachment to a university or a research organization? Do you have access to some seed funding? It's important that in your document, you are able to explain all of this in your strategy. And one of the things that you should have that should be basic is your capability statement. A lot of donors ask, even if it's the initiator of conversations. If you came to me and you said, you mention your organization's name, you give me your annual report, I won't read it because your annual report will be about 30 pages, 40 pages. But a capability statement will be about 2 pages. It tells me your history, what you are doing, how you are doing it. It communicates your qualification and past performance. It sets your organization apart from others. So it's important you have key areas that your capability statement should address: your core competencies, your past performance, your differentiators, your unique selling points, your organizational data, and your contact information. The tips: keep it brief, 1 to 3 pages maximum. Use short sentences and bullet points. You can have it in Microsoft, but when you are sharing, it should be in PDF. And it should be branded. You should have your organizational information on it.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Go ahead, Kwadwo.
So some speaking points and I wrap up. I'm saying that everything you do or not do should be an asset in your resource mobilization. So if you are doing youth empowerment and you chose not to do, if you are doing youth empowerment and you chose not to do Galamsey, the fact that you chose not to do Galamsey, but youth empowerment should be an asset to your resource mobilization process. Resource mobilization is intentional and does not happen by chance. You don't sit there and hope that you will get money. It's intentional. So who you will employ, you should have that in mind. I'm employing somebody with 10 years experience. We should be able to leverage on that as part of our resource. I'm employing somebody who has worked in Ghana, has worked in Malaysia, has worked in Cameroon. It should be an asset as part of your resource mobilization. Keyword for resource mobilization is diversification. So I gave about 5 or 6 resourcing areas. You should be able to diversify and target at least 3 or 2 of them. You shouldn't have just one organization giving you money or having money from just one organization. It's risky. So if tomorrow they pull out, what happens to you? Do all you can to guard your organizational integrity. This is key. You do all you can. It's about integrity. You may be the best at what you do, but if your organization that lacks integrity, nobody will give you money. Forget it. So it's important you guard your organizational integrity. And it starts with the basic things. Don't be involved in shady deals. You know, oh, I'm giving you money. Can you give it back to me? I will send it into your account. Just write a check for me, consultancy. Then somebody calls somebody. In our sector, people talk. The small conversations you think you are having with a good friend, on the basis of that, he will say it to another person, and before you know, the organization will be known to be the one who is involved in all the shady deals, and that won't help you. And you are not a jack of all trade organization. Find your niche, and the funds will find you. So, Imani does its work. Just an example. Imani is not into Galamsey, but they receive funding. Yota is not in anti-corruption, but they receive funding. NOSAC is not in, they're not into migration, but they receive funding. So find your niche and the funds will find you, or you will find the funds, whichever way you want to put it. So thank you. And then I will end here. If there are questions and areas of need, we can touch on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwadwo, for that elaborate presentation. Or I should put it a capacity building session. These sessions are mostly paid for, and I bet if you go on there and ask how much it costs to receive such a resource, I'm not sure we're able to pay you for that. So I am waiting to receive questions. You can send your reaction in the chat box. Say thank you to Kwadwo for sharing his experience with us. I have a few of those, and I'll start off from the consortium donor grants. As you rightly alluded to, that most often when donors are looking for organizations to fund, sometimes the consortium donor grants approach is used. The challenge, however, is folks who know themselves kind of play power play and, you know, make it difficult for other folks who are within that consortium to get access to grants if it happens to be their first time. How can young NGOs within our sector, you know, talking about Ghana, be positioned if they find themselves in a consortium donor grant, you know, group to put their foot in the right door to get access to opportunity? What would be the best practice you can suggest to them? First question.
Hello, Prosper. So do we want to take maybe some few more questions or?
Absolutely. Can you use this as a conversation starter? Then I'll pick a few more from. So you can start off with. So, and anyone else who wants to speak, please put up your hand and I'll pick you up or put your question in the chat box. Thank you.
So I lost you a bit with the line went off a bit, but usually with donor grants, you know, donors get money from donors. Let me say it that way. So people, organizations or governments give donors money and then they come and give it to us to work. And so they are peculiar with the integrity issues, because if they are not able to account for the money, then they will not be in business. And ultimately, we will also not be in business. And so if your focus is on donor grants, if your focus is on donor grants, credibility is key, or donor restricted grants, credibility is key. Ensuring that you have all the due diligence issues catered for is key. I know that even with some INGOs, before they will even work with you as a partner, some of them have this tall list of compliance issues they check. And so as a starter, I'll say that let's get all the compliance issues, the credibility, the integrity issues sorted out. Even before you go out there, even before you launch out there, that is key. Keep your house in order before you ask for any sort of money from anybody. I don't know if that helps.
It really does. And I think you've spoken to the issues and how we can be ready to get access to funding. Okay, so I would like to take questions from the audience. I haven't seen any of those in the chat box yet. If you want to speak, please put up your hand and unmute to ask your question. Kwadwo will be happy to answer. Okay, it's question time. Anyone ready to ask Kwadwo a question based on the presentation so far, or anything bothering you around your NGO work?
So, Prosper, I see a question. Someone is saying that the focus was on mobilizing money from donors. What about local or community resource mobilization? Say, for small NGOs in small communities who are trying to mobilize resources for a small project.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
my response to that will be that the in terms of principle, the things that you do to me from a donor, others you will go through to from a community, because then your community becomes your donor. The community becomes the people who will give you the money. So you can't treat them, you can't treat the community any different from how you would treat a donor organization. So that if your books are not in order, you don't expect that the community will say, oh, because we love you, we'll give you the money. Don't keep your books in order. Or don't communicate to us how you have been using funding. Or don't share with us how your previous activities have been implemented and who supported you and all of that. Of course, because it is at the community level, you would have to engage with them in a way that they will see reasoning in buying into your project or your organization. So the techniques are the same, but you vary them based on who you are speaking with. The community may not know due diligence in terms of how a donor knows it and operationalizes it, but you have to approach them knowing that they are the people who are giving you money. And so these are the due diligence issues I have to have in place to ensure that if tomorrow somebody says, oh, this organization, when you give them money, they use it to buy goods for the chief executive officer, you will be able to say that, no, we don't buy goods. And these are the proof to show that your money came and we used it for this and that and that. So my admonition will be, don't lower your standards simply because you are mobilizing money from a small community. Still keep it up there.
That's great. That's a good response. Don't lower your standards. So I'll take a question from Minister Joachim Isha. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello?
Yes, you're audible enough. Go ahead. Mr. Joachim. Okay, while waiting for him, let me read this question out. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, please. I can hear you.
My question got to do with, it's a consortium that we form, and basically we educate them. We're trying to educate the business, like the small scale businesses, on how they can empower their customer care system. So such an organization is more or less like non-profit organization. And then we do educations on air, radio stations, some of the radio stations, because we have partnerships, some of the radio stations. Then basically that's what we do. So we get in contact with some of the institutions, Ghana Revenue, district assemblies, and we give them the opportunity to come and speak to people on how they can mobilize funds. And then basically one of those is we also get in touch with the business, the stores and the rest, and empower their customers. If you are seeking for help, or we are seeking for what do you call it, a way to sponsor such programs, what are some of the things that, as per I listen to what do you call it, I joined in late, that's why maybe those kind of things have been discussed already. So I wanted to know how we can get funds to support those kind of, because basically we don't charge anybody anything, but we are trying to empower them so that they are what do you call it, their customer relations with their customers and how they deal with their people that came into the organization and that come and take advantage of their product and stuff, how they can build that relationship with them well, especially the hairdressers and what do you call it, the seamstresses and the fashion designers and stuff. Because somebody will go to a hairdresser, for this hairdresser, I will not go there again. Is there? So these are some of the things that we have started to educating them. So we wanted to ask, is there any way that maybe we get some fund, how we can approach to get fund to support such a project? And that's my question.
Okay. Would you like to respond to it as we take the other set of questions? Or let me just read the second question to you. So this question is from Roland. Speaking of credibility, what if your organization is low on funds, so it's unable to pay staff salaries, and thus is unable to pay taxes and SNAID as well? When you are submitting a proposal and you are asked if all your payments are up to date, what should your response be, please?
So I'll start from the second question on staff and SNIT and all of that.
Right.
So
yeah. That question is from Jifa. Yeah.
Yes. So the question I'll ask is, if you are unable to pay staff, it's fine. You can fill positions with volunteers, people who volunteer to work with the organization, and you don't have to pay them pay them salaries. But of course, it's a limit to a certain level of funds you can access. But what is important is that if they are volunteers, let it be documented. This person is volunteering with us, and these are his roles. These are what we are able to give him as an organization, and these are not what we are able to give him. This is what he brings to bear. This is the period he's with us. Those documentations are important. That is what speaks to the credibility. So if I came and you said, oh, 80% of our staff are volunteers, but there is no staff records to show, nobody has signed anything, but you just tell me that, it becomes problematic. If you will employ someone and you can't pay the person, then technically you have not employed the person, because then employment comes with remuneration. So you have to walk that fine line of knowing, if I don't have the funds to pay, but I can have them as volunteers, people volunteering their services, people volunteering to help us out, properly document it so that you can keep that as part of your HR documentation. And also know that because of that, because you are in competition with other organizations, if you are doing a proposal, find an innovative way of presenting that. It is not bad that you have volunteers working with you, but find a way of projecting that to your benefit, and don't see that as a weakness. Why will, say, someone who has a 10-year experience decide to volunteer with the organization and not take money? Perhaps the person buys into your vision. So the person buys into the organizational vision. So it's important that you find a way to present that when you are doing your project proposals. It's important. Don't see that as something that will work against you. With respect to the question about the consortium, I think there is really no, there isn't a one answer fits all scenario when it comes to consortiums or when it comes to what a consortium should do. But ideally, when you form consortiums, you have this consortium forming agreement that gets signed. And if it becomes important to, it becomes necessary to review it, then you always have to use that as the basis. We came together for this cause. We came together to do this. If we need to review it, we review it based on that. If people need to leave the consortium because interests have changed, values have changed, perceptions have changed, it's always important to do that. If you have received money from a donor organization and the donor knows that you are a 5-member consortium, but along the line, 2 are not showing interest, it's always important to go back to the donor to say, well, we were 5 initially, 2 are no longer interested, we are 3 now. What does that mean to the funding we are accessing from you? Do we have to bring in new people? Communication is key when it comes to your donor. Communication is key when it comes to a consortium. You are better off working with organizations who are willing and ready to work with you than have organizations who are not willing and ready to work with you, but pulling you down and pulling you back. So I would say that assess your situation, but at every point in time, be sure you are presenting what is truthful and you can always defend. If interests are not aligning, go back to your consortium agreement, review where necessary. And if people want to exit, you go through the appropriate exit measures that is captured in your document. I saw a question about soft skills.
Yeah, I was just about reading that to you. Let me read that to you. Yeah. So this question is from Maggie. So Maggie is asking, what are some of the soft skills an NGO can use to stay relevant in the eyes of the donor? You know, because out of sight is out of mind.
So, I mean, what I have learned, and I haven't been in this sector for so many years, but what I have learned and I see a lot of our organizations do is that basic newsletters, basic emails, you don't have to send emails like I send emails all the time because my role is coordinating. So I need to provide information for people. So daily, weekly basis, you are pushing emails to members, those who find it interesting or act. But if you have a quarterly newsletter and you have someone within the donor organization who you have an email to, or even access to their office, and you can give them occasionally just provide some updates with the work you are doing. Also, what now we think donors don't look out for our websites, our Facebook pages, they go there. If they are interested in working with you or you submit a proposal and they want to check, they go there. So keep your Facebook active, keep your social medias active, your website active, put information there. And as I say, put things out there that will project you. Put things out there that will project you. You know, just as an example, especially for those of organizations who are in the good governance space, you will find a lot of things going about which are political in nature. You don't have to comment on every political happening if really you have nothing to say. You don't have to. But if you have an alternative to present that will project the organization, then you properly do it and have it on your social media pages. But occasionally, for instance, if you are doing, what do you call this, a research dissemination or an end of projects, don't always invite only civil society organizations or people within. There's the opportunity to extend it to donors you worked with 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So they know, oh, we worked with you 10 years ago, but they are still active. And now they're even doing this, which we did not do with them. So things that will let a donor remember you. So those are some of the things, basic things, basic emails. You have the email address of a donor, a boss, or a chief executive. You have your chief executive occasionally send emails, perhaps to seek a meeting, to have an engagement session, you know, things to build to keep the relationships going.
Okay, great. So let me take Senanu, J Africa. Senanu, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My question on unrestricted funds. What are some of the strategies you use to raise money from individuals? I understand that with the restricted funds, because they go into programs, usually there's not much left. There's not a lot of wiggle room for operations, you know, and you might need some extra funding to cover additional spending, bonuses, things like that. So what are some of the ways that NGOs can raise unrestricted funds from especially high network individuals?
The name of the person, I missed that. Senanu.
Senanu, yes.
Senanu, it's one of the, with resource mobilization, the honest truth is that there is no one size fits all approach. There is little you can do external to you, but there is more you can do internal to you. So if you want money from, say, Despite, just mentioning his name. If you want money from, you want money from Vodafone Foundation, and you go to them, they ultimately decide, even with donors, they ultimately decide if they want to work with you. But the basics of it is that you have to prop yourself such that when you do speak with these organizations, they perhaps will only decide not to work with you because they have run out of funds. So you ensure your issues around credibility and integrity are intact. Your books are intact. But fundraising events, for instance, are one of such. These days they do media soirees, or you can seek some personal engagements. You are doing your annual strategy. You are preparing your midterm strategy. You don't need to engage them, but you find a way of picking their thoughts so that you already start sowing ideas in their mind that, oh, this is the area we are looking at, or is this an area your organization is looking at? Is this an area you may want to give money to? So as part of your strategy development, you engage them, even though you don't have to. You engage them just to build a relationship from there. When you print your annual calendars and all of that, instead of giving it to only civil society people, these are the people you can take to their offices, give them, seek meetings, and engage them. So it's about relationship. With restricted funds, you don't have to have a relationship. You don't restricted funds, relationships matter. So it's about relationships.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Great, thank you. So I'm reading this question from Margaret. I think it's a follow-up. What would you do when you are asked to submit a bank statement when you don't have? That's one. And then from Douglas too, which is also a follow-up. How can some of us who don't have local funding or donor funding or permanent staff do this in our workplace?
If you are an organization and you don't have a bank statement, then it's problematic. We need to really take a deep dive, because your financial statements are the basis on which a lot of discussions on resource mobilization will start from. So we need to address that issue. why you don't have a bank statement, because it's not you as an individual, it's you as an organization. So if you're an organization, even if you are not paying people, you'll be buying stuff, you'll be paying for office rent, or you are paying for fuel and all of that, and that will go through a bank or an account of a sort. So if you don't have, then it's something we need to quickly identify why and address. On Mr. No's question, how can some of us who don't have local funding donor support? So, as I said, it starts with the initial template I projected, that internal reflection. You have to start from there. We don't have, on our HR, all the people in our office are volunteers. It's okay. And the reason they are volunteers is because we don't have money. But if they are volunteers and we have an agreement and a contract signed with them, what that means is that in our proposal writing, if they ask for CVs or background statements, we can use the background statements of our volunteers who technically now are part of our work to be able to do that capacity statement, because they are volunteers and we have a contract with them. So that comes from there. If they are volunteers, they are giving a certain service to your organization. They are a finance person or they are an M&E person. And so they are delivering a service. And so the reports from your program implementation already comes in. So I'm just giving this as an example, because you may not have money, implementing projects, but once you are an organization and you have staff and you have programs running or you have activities running, you have to have a way of projecting the upside of that, as opposed to just seeing it that, oh, Crawford to Crawford Kami, I don't pay anybody, so I won't get it. But it's all about how you project it without lying. Let me add it, without lying. Don't lie to any organization. Don't say things that are not as though they are. Just be honest, be sincere. If an organization will give you money, if a donor will give you money, they won't give you money because you are telling them a sweet story. They'll give you money because they believe in what you are saying and your ability to deliver. I don't know if that helps, Mr. No. Mr. No, I know you. We can later on discuss in detail if you.
Okay, so those are the questions. I think Douglas question has been answered, but we'll get another response. Do we have more questions? I'll be reading the ones that are in the chat box. Charles, would you like to ask a question? Mr. Ashi, would you like to ask a question?
No.
Okay.
No,
all right.
please.
I'm on mute. I'm muting you now. Okay. So let me read this. Before we could access major grant, this is from Constance Ohene. Before we could access major grant, we capitalize on social media to raise funds for our projects. People want to give, but they don't know how and when to. It's up to you, the organization, to be strategic by clearly communicating your why and laying emphasis on differences that your work is making. I think Constance is actually adding her view to what you've shared so far. Margaret Osei, I hope you can hear me now from your end, since you said you can't. So Mary says, that's not practical. What about their transportation and their personal expenses? I think this is in response to Kojo's response to some of the questions that were asked. Do we have any question? If you have, can you put up your hand and then I'll unmute you to ask directly. We are right on time. So if you have any other questions, please put up your hand and I'll be happy to bring you on. So Kojo, I want to share this. I think about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a project that was published by one of the NGOs, and the small NGOs, put an application. They were selected for it. Actually, it was more like a joint project that they were supposed to, apply for, targeted at gender issues. At the end of the day, this small organizations went through the process, anticipating to receive the funds when the organization asked for their banking details, and they never heard from them. I mean, what would you think probably happened during that phase? And what should these organizations do after following up a couple of times? And is it a normal thing that should be expected within the sector?
So, I always, when I have conversations with colleagues, I always tell them this, I may like you, I may like your organization, I may like your person, but if it comes to funds, the one giving you has his integrity to protect. That is the first thing. Donors have their integrity to protect. Imagine if the European Union gave $10 million to an organization that doesn't have a bank account, and 3 months later, it comes out that, oh, they gave an organization $10 million and they don't even have a bank account. Prosper, what do you think will be the impression about the European Union?
Absolutely, they didn't do their due diligence before giving out cash.
The first question people will ask is, are they serious? Are they a serious-minded organization? So they have, it's not even about you. They have their integrity to protect. And so all the things they ask for, all the due diligence they do is to protect their integrity in the first place. So if you say you are an organization and you don't have a standing or a running bank account, that's why I'm saying that then it becomes problematic. So it's an issue we need to address. All the big organizations, if today you heard that, Utah doesn't have an organizational account, but it is the CEO's account the monies go through, I'm sure you already start asking yourself, so what happens if you go and he's not available? So it's important that on the back of this, everything you must do as an organization to ensure your integrity and your credibility is not questioned. You have to do it. Other than that, on the basis of friendship and relationship, on goodwill in the media and all of that, you will get the hype. It will get you the attention. But when it comes to the details, the funds won't come, because donors will now ask themselves if they want to tie their credibility to yours, and yours is questionable. So it's important. I am sure that the inability of those small organizations to provide the statement is what curtailed it, because there will be another organization doing the same thing or doing a similar thing who would have their bank statements in place, who wouldn't have much of a bigger issue in terms of credibility. And a lot of the time, depending on the mindset of the donor, sometimes they would say, okay, we have selected you, but we see these as challenges in terms of your due diligence. Can you provide a plan or show us how you'll be able to address these within this period so that we move forward? Some donors do that. They saw your capability issues and realize that we want to work with you, but in terms of due diligence, perhaps you don't have a good financial system in place. Can you get that in place? Perhaps you don't have an HR manual. Can you have an HR manual in place? Perhaps we will deal with issues of children. You don't have a children policy. Can you have that in place? Some donors will actually prompt you to put all that in place, and then the funding will come to you. So it's important that you address issues of credibility, and I think that will solve a lot of the issues. With these days with proposals and all of that, you are not even sure that the organization that presented it, they wrote the proposal themselves.
Yeah.
So we can always negate that.
Okay, great, thank you. So Bismarck has a question. Bismarck, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible enough.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwadwo, for a wonderful presentation, and thanks for the opportunity. I want to find out. There is an organization that has about 4 or 5 key staff. These staff members were paid well for 5-6 years, but things later on did not work well for the organization, and they remained committed to their work for almost 2 years without any payment. In writing their annual report, can they capture their voluntary services, their sacrifices in monetary terms and report as money? Because if there was money, they would have been paid X amount, but there is no money. So they decided to still continue working for a better day to come. Secondly, there are times you get in-kind support. In writing your report, can you quantify it in monetary terms? So that, because there are times some donors will say, if you've never managed money up to 100,000 Ghana cedis or $100,000, they may not give you that much. So can you quantify some of these sacrifices, voluntary services, in-kind support in monetary terms in your reports and submit to donor?
Kwadwo, would you like to respond to that, or I take Joseph, then you answer both at once?
Yeah, so I think that the question about the staff and inability to pay, my suggestion would be, and you can later check with perhaps people who may have much more experience, but my suggestion would be consider them as volunteers and re-sign a contract with them that shows that they are volunteers. Because if you want to, on the back of the argument that, well, if you had money, you would have paid them each, say, 100,000 cedis, but your financial statement will not back that up, because these are not paid staff, they are unpaid staff. So my suggestion would be have a new contract with them, or a contract amendment with them that shows that they are volunteers. Of course, depending on how you position this, it already would give credibility to your organization. Why would 5 people who previously received money now agree not to receive money, but stay on for 2 years, 3 years in a volunteering position? And depending on how you pitch this, a donor would rather see that these are people who are really interested in the work and are not necessarily there just for the pay or just for the salary. So I think for me, that would be my advice. Have them as volunteers and capture it well in your books. On the in-kind support, it's a very practical but tricky question. And I think that these days, donors make that distinction. Some donors make that distinction between what you receive as in-kind and what you receive as cash. So you built a project in the community gave you land. If you were to buy the land, you would have paid $1 million, but the community gave it to you for free. The value of the land is 1 million. You didn't pay for it. The community gave you, but that is the value. So these days they make that distinction. And my suggestion would be, where you are conflicted about anything to do with, because donors have different requirements. There is no one size fits all or one approach fits all for donors. Where you are conflicted, always seek clarity with the donor organization you are speaking with. Because one organization may be okay with you quantifying it as resource, another may not be. So it's always important that you seek that clarity with that particular donor so that you are sure and it doesn't raise any, it doesn't put you across as trying to hide information or trying to present false information.
Okay, great, thank you. Joseph, Marco, the floor is yours.
Yeah, myself, yeah. A very good afternoon to you, all of you, and to Kwadwo and you particular. You guys are doing a great job. Yeah, I've been around listening to all the happenings, and I'm impressed. But then my mind came on something, and I wanted to just ask for clarification. This is a touch on the explanation Kwadwo gave a while ago in regards to, let's say, an organization has been contacted by donors. This is for the first time. Let's just say the organization has never secured any funding from any donor before. But then looking at the structure and everything, it looks good. People hold the view that once you have not gotten, your organization had not gotten any funding support before, it means you are not in good standing. But in other words, an organization or a donor sees that you are doing a good job and writes to you. What are your chances? Is it not good? Is it not good enough to say you are doing something that that warranted that recognition that, okay, you should apply for this or that? And I want a clarification on that. How do you go about that so that you can secure that funds, at all costs without missing? Yeah. What are your chances? In other words, what are your chances if an organization writes to you asking you to put in your application or to put through your application? What are your chances if for the first time you have not secured any donor support or funding in that regard? That's my question round. Yeah.
Thank you, boss. Joseph, I know you too. So you see, my suggestion on this would be, so usually funding calls or donors will come to you, and you may have, if you are fortunate, you may have a turnaround time of, say, 2 months to even put your proposal or your pitch together. If you are fortunate, sometimes it's even quite short. It give you like a month to submit your concept note. And then if your concept note is taken on board, then you are given a longer period to present a detailed proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice for all of us will be, keep your house in order, because a lot of the opportunities will come to you as a surprise. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't prepared before the donor asks you, a lot of the things you need to do, you will do it in a rush, and you may not do it extremely so well. And so your audit reports, your policies, your HR manuals, all those things you need to do for everybody to know that you are indeed an organization and not an individual. Have them prepared, so that if a donor comes and says, Joseph, we like your work, bring us a proposal on how we can get human rights issues acknowledged in Ghana, you can now focus more on the technical aspect of the request rather than the due diligence aspect of the organization, which will distract you anyway. And so for me, I say that prepare in waiting. Take care of all the house issues, the housekeeping issues, and document, in terms of program delivery, document your activities, activity reports, project reports, annual reports. All those things should be done and properly done, because ultimately, those are the things you would refer and reference to in putting together any proposal anyway. So it's important we put that in perspective. If an organization comes to you, as you are saying, already means they have seen something about you they like. It is now up to you to confirm that what you have seen about me is true. And I'm telling you it is true based on these facts and not based on assumption. So it's important to do that. I'm re-echoing this. Always have in mind that donors have their credibility to protect. So if they feel associating with you will have a bad influence on their credibility, they won't associate with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the brilliant question, Joseph. I'd like to take two questions, which will be towards the end. Roland Adatu, if you're on the now, please put up your hand and I'll mute you for you to ask your question. Can we have two set of questions as we wrap up? Anyone ready? Please put up your hand and I'll unmute, or you can drop your question in the chat. Okay, so I think Freeman is sharing a thought. The reality is that an organization must measure its strength to the type of funds they are applying for. For example, your financial strength and staff strength. You always get funds that suit your level with a good proposal. Absolutely, Freeman. Yeah, if you're a small NGO, there is a small grant that you can apply for based on the capacity you are able to take. James, yes, we'll work around that. So if you shared your email in the chat box, we're putting it together. And after the session, we'll see how we can get the recording, the presentation to you as well as the recording. Okay. I wouldn't want to assume we have, okay, yeah, we have a last question from Joseph Afangbe. The floor is yours, Joseph. Joseph, your hand is up. Would you like to ask a question or chip in something? Okay. I think that's a mistake. Oh, right.
Hello?
Yeah, Joseph, we can hear you. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I also want to thank the team, most especially the moderator and then that is Kwadwo for the great impact. I just want to add a little to what Kwadwo already said concerning a question whether an in-kind support should be monetized or it should just be left like that. I have a personal issue with regards to that. Recently, I was applying for some funding, and as part of it, the donors requirements, they ask, directly that, okay, if you have ever received any funding before, and there is a maximum amount, funds that they requested for, limit $100,000 US, that's whether you've been able to manage that particular funding before, and also whether you have also received an in-kind support from any other donor or organization. So in some proposals you have it specified, and also in some too it's not specified. But then I also to add to what Kwadwo said, I would say that in most cases we just have to be transparent in whatever we are doing. So by so doing, that also gives a kind of credibility to our organization and what we do, and that also give the donors the chance to be able to work with you without anything. So thank you very much.
Good question and response. Kwadwo, over to you.
No, I think Joseph was adding on.
Yes.
Joseph is, so I wouldn't add on. He's an experienced senior colleague in this. So.
Oh, perfect. Great. So I'll read the last question and then, yeah. So the question is coming from Freeman Canton. He's asking, how can NGOs handle the issue of matching funds?
That's a very, it's
another session, eh?
No, it's another session. Because the thing is that match funding means that the donor is expecting that you have funds from other sources internally. So if they are giving you 100,000, they know you are non-for-profit, but they are expecting that you have some institutional funding to be able to complement the money that they are giving you. So it's usually quite difficult there. So you find that INGOs who have mother organizations are easily able to match fund than national NGOs who, for a lot of the time, are at the lower end of the implementation. So you get the money from a donor, you implement. When the project is done, your money is done. You get another money from a donor, you implement. When the money is done, your project is done, your money is done. So if I come to you and I say, oh, I'll give you 700,000, find 300,000 and we are in business, then already you're asking yourself, me, the money that I get, I finish it and I finish the project and the money finishes. So where am I going to get the 3,000? So that's why it's important to always diversify. So if, for instance, you are doing some social enterprise that gives you money and you can, on the back of that, say, oh, we train young women in shea butter making. We have established our own shea butter making plant and we make this amount of money from it. On the back of that, maybe we can raise the counterpart money. Then that already gives you a leverage as opposed to another organization who is not doing that. So it's a good question. It will be another session. Perhaps we can take a deep dive into that. But yeah, Freeman, this question there, you need another session.
Yes, absolutely. I think you actually spoke or touched on one of the topics that someone recommended, Irene. So maybe in the next session, we could have a session on NGOs that want to operate a social enterprise and how they can have other sources of income and all. So well noted. So on this note, can you all join me wherever you're sitting with a clap, virtual or turning on your microphone? Let's clap for Kwadwo for facilitating such an informative session today. Thank you so much. I've been, glued to everything, taking notes, and I hope that this session has been very helpful to all of us. He talked about SWOT analysis. He talked about a few donor organizations that work specifically to a particular thematic focus if you are working in the space. So what we'll do after the session is to put together the recording and also find out if it's okay to share the presentation with all of us. So we'll put together all the emails that have been shared so far. Hopefully, once we get a go, we'll share it with you. So before we wrap up, I would call on someone to give us a closing remarks, and she's on the session. Can we please have welcome Margaret Osei, who is with Move the World. Margaret, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. I think this has been, hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, please, very audible enough.
All right. So I think this has been a very short presentation, but very insightful. And I believe that as young people coming up and then trying to learn new things each and every time, and trying to raise funds to support our organizations and our projects personally, we can learn more. And then as Kwadwo has already told us, we should be able to, identify our strengths and then the opportunities that we have. So thank you so much, Kwadwo. We just want to appreciate you for the good work done. And we believe that as we have had you today, you would also get the opportunity to be with us another time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your presence. And then whatever you have taught us today, we believe that we are going to use it. Thank you. Again, we also want to thank the moderator who is in the name of Prosper Tonye. Prosper, we thank you from Skills Hub Creator. We just want to appreciate you for the good work done. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to moderate all these short presentations and people asking questions here and there. You have been able to, really moderate the session very well for us. So thank you so much. And again, without the participants on the platform, we wouldn't have had this session to be successful. So to all members who joined in to participate today, we just want to congratulate you for joining in and for participating. I mean, all questions that we asked, we have been answered, and we believe that we are going to use it as well. Again, to the communication team who was there to, provide the connection for us to work very well. We also want to say a very big thank you to you. Without you, we wouldn't have had a successful meeting this afternoon. Thank you so much for, being there and then trying to work out the connections for us to support the training this afternoon. I think we have another activity of the Youth Sub platform in June, but then I think information will be sent through the CSO platform, so we should stay tuned for any information that might come up, and then we go by it as well. And then also I have been told that there will be a nomination to vote and select new conveners of the platform, which is the CSO platform. Therefore, if any member is ready to, or we encourage members who feel to, nominate other CSO organizations to join the platform or to be nominated as leaders for the CSO platform. I think that is all, but if there is any, Ofebia can add it as well. So I just want to say a very big thank you to all of us for today's session. And I believe that we will work on whatever that has been told us, has been said so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for a very informative closing remarks. So for all of us that are on the CSO platforms, every information that is needed for the next groups of organization that needs to become the convener will be shared, as she rightly said. Usually when I moderate sessions, I'd like to take photos of everyone. Maybe in our next one in June, we'll be able to do that. But thank you all for joining. The recording will stop from now, and with your email shared and permission from Kwadwo, we'll share the feedbacks with you. Okay, let's take the cameras on. So let's do this one. Let's turn on our camera. We'll take a photo. I'll take a screenshot of that. So whichever place you are, just turn on your camera for a brief, for us to take a quick photo. I want to see all the faces. Okay. Are you ready for photo now? Okay. Okay, so let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Hey. Let me do the second time again. 3,